loves. Welcome to the Unshakable Soul podcast. We are on episode 49, and today I have for you a special conversation or monologue, and it's that of my story. So I'm going to share with you kind of the background of where was Sophia 10 years ago and what has actually shaped who she is now, right? What has she learned along the way? And there's a lot of things. So when I was reflecting on this last week, I pulled it into 8 compartments, but they all feed into each other. Okay. Now, I got emotional writing about this. I did a big reflection last week. But I feel ready to share it. So thank you for being here. So where did it all begin? Let's dive in. It began in 2012 with my first relationship breakup. That relationship, even though it only lasted 5 months, I thought I was going to marry the guy. Okay? And that Sophia then did not know how to deal with him not wanting to be with me anymore. And it was an amicable breakup. There was nothing that I could blame him about, right? And vice versa. It was just this. But that moment led me to self-sabotage for many years. So what happened after is that I got in a pattern where I would undernourish myself and over exercise. So under eating, over exercising, and then to recover the nutrients that my body was missing and wanting, and just the calories in general, I would binge eat. I would binge eat usually at night. And I felt so much shame, and I'd restart the same cycle in the morning. Okay. So in hindsight, this was how I was coping with the fact that I could not control his decision to say bye. Okay. It was too big of a pain for me to handle, so I used food and exercise to numb and also to distract myself. Okay. And I know this is not uncommon, right? This is also why I'm sharing this. So what happened in terms of psychosomatic symptoms that I was getting? The biggest one is that I lost my period. And I'm going to be vulnerable. I still have not regained naturally my period. It was the biggest signal for me from my body that this is not okay, right? And I was regular before, and I didn't have any periods that hurt me. I was very lucky. So I lost my period about maybe 6 months after the breakup, and my hair started thinning because I wasn't eating properly. I had very fragile bones. I got very skinny. Okay. And emotionally, that's more physical. On the emotional side, I was triggered very easily. So I became very impatient and defensive, especially with my parents. So of course my parents were worried. They didn't know what to do. They felt helpless. And I had such a big ego, right? And I still have to watch out for my ego, that I didn't want to admit I actually needed help, and God forbid to them. So I'd be very, I don't know if mean's the word, but it's just very reactionary, very fiery. I'd obviously anxiously eat, and I wouldn't be social. Like before the breakup, I was social. I was very social. I went out, I went partying, and it didn't really bother me what I ate, right? It wasn't so like controlling. I was just like, I ate healthily, not the most healthily, but it was healthy enough, right? And me not being socially really isolated myself. I really isolated myself. I felt deeply misunderstood. I felt alone, right? And of course, through the self-sabotaging behavior of over-exercising and under-eating, I felt a lot of shame, right? A lot of shame around what I was doing to myself. I didn't know how to stop, right? Because I was trying to fill this void. But I didn't know that back then. I just wanted to control something. So this, I remember vividly calling my mom. I was at Bishop's University, I think 3rd year. And it was my 21st birthday. And I remember nobody had done anything for me. And I was seeing other people, like their friends were doing surprise parties. And I was, I guess, expecting something similar, but I didn't receive anything. Maybe I received some happy birthdays. But in that moment, I remember calling her, crying, being like, what is going on? Like, I feel so alone. Okay, and I didn't know back then that I was actually creating that. Right, I was isolating myself because I had so much shame and guilt and fear of putting myself back out there, regardless of a romantic relationship, just out there in the social scene. I became very controlling of what I ate and just got so obsessed with my body image, right? And again, this is nothing new for a lot of women, right? So just, if you have been through that, if you are going through that, know that you're not alone and that there is a way through this. I'm going to share about that a little bit later on. And just to finish the psychosomatic symptoms I was feeling, it's mentally, if we can look at them in terms of beliefs or thoughts, the reoccurring ones that were coming up and that were manifesting in this self-sabotaging behavior, number one is, I am not good enough. I did not feel good enough. Right? I did not feel as though I was a good enough person to deserve being with somebody. And I was protecting myself, or not protecting, but I was trying to control the way I looked. So I really did not like my lower abdomen, the way when I ate it kind of pouched out. Right? And now in hindsight, when I lost my period, which is the exact same area, I had so much shame around there. So how do you think my yoni was feeling? Right? My womb space. Right? That has been my biggest journey, and still to this day, my number one practice now. And this is recent, maybe 2 years ago, that I really started to do womb work and really dive into nurturing my body, my womb space, and slowing down and working on recalibrating my nervous system, that I really have felt a shift. Right? But before, I was just like, my body was completely on fight or flight. So, in terms of more beliefs that were coming in, I can do this myself. So again, the ego coming in, I can do this myself. I got this. I don't need help. Right? I don't need help. I don't trust you. But actually, I don't trust me. That has been the biggest revelation. It's not about me not trusting you. It's like, can I actually trust me and make decisions that are based on my intuition, what feels good for me? But I was so disconnected from my body that how could I have made the right decisions for me if I didn't have access to my inner guidance? Yeah. Looking back, like when I was reflecting on this last week, I was like, oh my gosh, I love you so much. Like, this has been the biggest shift. I mean, it's not new. Like, self-love is everything. It's the golden key for everything that you desire in life, that you want. Relationships, career, dreams. Like, it's everything comes with self-love. Right? If you're not good in here, you're not going to be good out there. Right? It's going to be reflected in your relationships with everything, with life, with your lover, with your parents, with animals, with the rocks, with the trees. Yeah. So that was basically in a nutshell, physically, emotionally, mentally, what was going on in me. Whoa. And here I wanna highlight two things. That again, 1 year, 2 years ago, I had this revelation. I was like, holy shit. So my deepest fear was not being accepted and loved for who I am. Right? That's why I was trying to mold myself, or trying to control and really self-sabotaging. I didn't feel good myself. So in the end, it's all about, can I accept myself and know that I'm good enough? Right? To know my own worth. That it's not via somebody else, it's actually here. It's always here. That deepest fear was actually also connected to my deepest desire. To be accepted and loved for who I am. So in other words, my deepest fear was actually to be seen in my raw, authentic expression in who I am. Every single moment, in my truth, in my fullness. And that's the feminine. Right? She's the storm. You can't predict her. But I was trying to fit myself in and control. And then over the years, the feminine energy in me, actually, my little girl was like, oh my gosh, I just want to play. I just want to have sex. I just want to love and be loved and be touched. And not only sexually, but just feel pleasure and joy. And I was just like, my masculine energy really kind of constricted her. Okay, so it was my fear was also my desire. But I was stuck in the middle. Right? Because my deepest desire was to be seen and accepted and loved for who I am, in my rawness and my fullness. Right? Whether I'm crying, whether I'm full of joy and light, with a little bloated belly because I had 1 or 2 cookies. Right? Or was it in a beautiful dress, in my sweatpants, whatever. Right? So when I made then I realized, oh my gosh, everything comes back to me. Everything comes back to me. Am I able to accept my fullness? My range of emotion, my dual nature in essence, my human dual nature. Right? The fact that I personally love to go to the extremes. I've had to accept and embrace that and not shame that. Right? The fact that I love, I crave deep, intimate connection. Right? And that I'm actually a very sensual and sexual person. Right? But that was completely suppressed through, I think it was about 6 years of my life where I was going through the cycle, just looping over exercise, under eating, and then binging, over exercise, under eating, and binging. This was it, right? Until I went, oh, there is a way out. Now, and I'm not going to say that it was actually me that started that way out. I'm going to say that at the end, my parents were like, what the fuck are we going to do with you? So I think this is how it went. They sent me to the hospital, to a doctor, to get examined. And for some reason I accepted. And I went, and I remember this doctor telling me, after the assessment, he said, you have 2 choices. Either you continue this way and you get intubated because your body's not getting enough nutrients. You just get thinner and thinner. Or you make changes in your lifestyle and habits. And that, in hindsight, I'm like, it's probably because it wasn't my mom or dad that told me And I was like, oh, okay. There's possibility of truth here, right? But that was really the moment where I'm like, oh, I don't want to be tubed. Because my number one value is freedom, right? So it was like, whoa, no. And that lit up a fire in me that brought me on the quest for truth. I became like a seeker of truth. So there was the phase of the deep suffering, like the looping, the cycling, that was like 6 years. And then there was a quest. Like, I'm on a fucking quest and I'm seeking truth. Quest for answers. Right? Because I didn't want to go on birth control. Yes, I got my period on birth control, but I was like, no. Like, I want to get to the root. So yeah, I went to doctors, I went to gynecologists, and they were kind of like derping, and I wasn't satisfied with the answers I was getting. So I got into books. Like, I went like full into the books. I went to different avenues, podcasts, right? And that's where yoga found me, right? I was working at the government, and then I remember, okay, no, it was before that I had met my other partner, whom I've had a relationship. I had a relationship for a long, long time. And he's the one that introduced me to more spiritual practices. And I didn't really think much of it back then. I was about 23, 24. But he's really, and I see it now as part of my soul family and very important part of my journey of awakening to, like, there is like something deeper here that needs healing. Versus the superficial kind of answer I was getting of like, just eat more. I was like, wait a second. And me as a person of depth, I'm just like, I'm going, right? So it was in combination with that second relationship, and that brought a lot of like aha moments. And then yoga found me, and I did my teacher training. I had a practice, but it was more like a stretch, like, to be honest, because I was running these half marathons, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna stretch. So I was using the asanas mainly, right? But then when I went on that teacher training, that's when I really had another aha. It was the first ecstatic dance I did. This was 2021. This was recently in Guatemala. And I had my first ecstatic dance. And I just felt so good. And it was flowing. And it was moving in ways I've never moved before. And I was like, there's something here. And another thing happened on that retreat. Not only did I meet amazing people, and I was like, traveling is a big part of my life. Just getting into different cultures and meeting different people. But I also remember the first yin class I took. I literally, for an hour, was bawling my eyes off. Like, no shame in that, because it was the release I needed. And I met a beautiful guy in that retreat, and we talked to some things, and I explained to him, like, I was still grieving from the relationship from the other guy that was over. Like, that really sparked this other deep dive into the world of spirituality. Like, there has to be more, right? So along with healing my own self, I was healing from a relationship breakup and meeting people along the way that were, in hindsight, just pointing me on my path, and having these experiences of, little by little, they were all accumulating. Everything's accumulating. If we can look at our lives that way, all the pieces, right? There's no bad choice, right? There's no misturn. There's just only these lessons you're learning from the people, if you're willing to listen and have this shift in perspective. So I digress. I also had mushroom journey trips from one of my friends here in Ottawa. That was also very opening and very confirming with the path of yoga, which has now turned into the path of the high priestess, the alchemist, the queen, the archetypes, the tantric goddess. Like, it's going into all these different kind of, I don't want to label it, but it's yoga opened up a realm of deeper understanding of who I am and my role here on earth, which is very grounding, right? Especially amidst a world that's just like very overstimulating and always asking us to listen out there instead of in here. So magic mushrooms, so psilocybin at the end of the day, that was also part of my path, my healing, and it showed me two things. First of all, that there is magic in what I have to share in terms of body movement. Okay? There's also a lot of sexual energy in you. Okay? That a lot of it was suppressed. Okay, so that was coming out. The mushrooms were showing me that. They were also showing me you have a connection to earth. And you have healing hands. Which kind of like, I was questioning because I was like, my hands are always cold. Right? I've always had this, just like cold hands, cold extremities. And anyways, the mushroom journey was very awakening, but I knew that it was just awakening more consciousness, but the real work, it wasn't about going back to the mushrooms, because the mushrooms they will keep on telling you the same story and show you the same thing until you actually start doing the work, which is basically integrating it. So that's continued my journey of integration. So actually doing the practices, getting on my mat. It also means not only on my mat, but in life, noticing, when am I still being triggered? Who is triggering me? In what situations? What is my body telling me in those moments? Where do I feel the trigger? Right? Nervous system recalibration. And all of that with a lot of compassion. Okay? So, who were my greatest teachers? My mom and that one partner I had for 6 years. Yeah. They were the biggest catalyst for this self-transformation. And my greatest mirrors. Now, it's the same thing. I'm not with that partner anymore, but the relationships I have, especially with men that come into my life, whether it's for a day, a week, a month, friendship, or loving relationships, or more intimate relationships, they're all serving as a beautiful indicator of what still needs to be healed here. Right? So there's a lot of like gratitude that goes out to anybody that comes on my path. So I'm gonna dive in now. I'm just looking, I have some notes here. So they showed me, I just want to end on this, the mirror effect. They were showing me where I still hold a wound. So my paradoxical desire for intimacy and connection is always there, yet I fear that vulnerability that comes with opening my heart for fear of that rejection. Okay, that's been a huge part of my journey. Not feeling good enough is another one. So that was leading to food and eating addictions to really escape from the pain and create this false sense of control. Right? And those two relationships, my mom and my ex, were constantly mirroring that to me. And the last one I want to share, or there's two other ones, not trusting my own body. Right? Because I had severed myself so much from my body. I was a lot in my mind, and it caused me a lot of anxiety. Still to this day, I consciously have to tune out. When there's an important decision to be made, it's like drop into your body. Drop into your intuition. Stop searching for external validation. Right? What is it that you want? What do you need right now? And that's the muscle that you can train with smaller decisions. And that also is tied into not feeling safe in my own body. Right? I didn't feel safe to hold the energetic charge when I was in an emotional state. So I would jump out. Right? And that's basically the work. Right? It's, can you realize when you're getting triggered and notice the sensation in your body and start with various practices, breathing, a little movement, grounding, sounding, to come back to the center to be able to see clearly. So that you don't need to go to your coping mechanism. So that you can actually allow yourself to feel. Right? So there's one summary line is allow yourself to feel. It is safe to feel. It is safe to be here. Right? And then later on it became it is safe to be in your power. It is safe to be seen. That's more recently, like 2 years. Like, oof, like I've been leaning into that one. Okay? So I'm going to share with you now, summarizing what I learned over the past 10 years plus? Yeah, 13 years. 13 sounds like a good number. Okay, so number one, your biggest triggers can become your most valuable teachers if you let them be. Right? So we have to be able to be curious, because a lot of us tend to react to whatever is going on out there. What actually is going on is that there's something within you, which is mostly your inner child, that is remembering something that happened them in the past that's triggering your reaction. Right? Fight, flee, freeze, fawn, whatever it is. So I had to become, especially for my mom, I had a lot of knee-jerk reactions, to become very aware of what was bringing me on edge. What was she actually saying? Like, what was the deeper wound? That's been a huge part of my journey. A huge part. And now it's like, if she's saying things, I just know it's literally, it doesn't affect me anymore as much. I'm not going to say it's 0%, maybe it's 5% instead of 80% before. Because I learned to have such a good relationship with my inner girl and fill my own cup and nurture my own self. And her words don't hurt me anymore. Okay, so part of my journey, a lot of my journey, is to reparent myself. And that's what I teach people and guide them to really reparent yourself, in that you learn to develop a strong mothering energy through self-nourishment, compassion, right? Believing in yourself. And then your strong father energy, this deep listening, holding space for the fullness of your feminine expression, your emotions, your beingness. So that was huge. Really looking at my triggers and seeing, okay, what's the teaching here? Number 2 is my emotions offer me a gateway to a deeper desire and need that perhaps has not been met. So emotions, as a lot of you know, is energy in motion. And I was suppressing a lot of emotions, right? But when I allowed them to come up, that is where the alchemy began, right? Was I allowing myself to actually feel the pain, to feel the rage. I noticed I had so much rage because I didn't feel as though I could stand on my own 2 feet, right? And actually it was my little girl that had a lot of rage because I was keeping her caged in. So my emotions actually became a beautiful gateway for beautiful, like, creative projects and just creativity. And that's what fueled the start of my business, right? I'm a very, very emotional being, and a lot of women are. So instead of shaming my emotions and suppressing and numbing, eating myself through them, it was like, oh, well, what would happen if I let them come up? Because when I release and cleanse, then again I come into this space of clarity. I make space. Because I can't understand or know what I need if I'm just completely blocking myself. Right? And I'm putting my head in the sand, let's say. It's like, oh, I'll just continue going with emotions, doing what I do, even though I know it's toxic. It's like I had to face my pain. And that's a huge thing that I guide women in. It's like, you gotta face your pain, face your fears. Be able to feel what you're feeling. And there's a way to do it safely. There's a way that you can access that. Number 4 is that my pain fueled my desire to take self-responsibility. Right? It fueled my desire to, again, as I mentioned, create the business. It fueled my desire to want to know the truth. Right? And that's really like what I'm doing here in my own life, is learning more and more about myself. Like every day I'm different. Like I see these different facets of me. Some I'm like, oh, some of them I'm like, oh wow, like this is beautiful. And just loving it all. So there's a big like curiosity, like being open to experience something new in yourself. Right? And that self-responsibility piece is like it's not trusting the outside world, but there's just so much information out there that I wanted to know what was true for me, and that I could feel empowered to make my own choices. Right? So it was this like, well, I'm going to take responsibility for the way I'm acting in life, because I've noticed that I was hurting, especially like the people that are closest to me. So I was like, wait a second, like there has to be something deeper here. Right? So that I was continuing like unraveling the layers by layers to find truth. And the truth was basically that I had a little girl in me that was screaming for my attention, that did not feel safe. And she just wanted love and connection. That's all she wants. Deep, intimate love and connection. So that was my journey of recreating this wholeness within me. Like, can I hold myself? Right? And when that happens, when you're coming into a state of wholeness, what I've noticed for me anyways is you don't react. You're responding to your environment from a place of grace and love. Right? And that also means I'm setting my boundaries, because I honor myself. I love myself. My time and energy is worthy. It's valuable. So it's really playing with, again, the feminine and masculine energy. It's like, wait a second, I'm taking responsibility of my emotional outbursts, but I'm also looking at places where I'm like giving away my energy and depleting myself. And for me, for the longest time, it was just like over-exercising, just overdoing. Yeah. I'd love to know, drop me a comment if any of this is resonating with you. If you're seeing like something parallel with your life. Alright, I'm going to continue. Number 5. Connecting with my inner child served as my greatest gateway to my heart. So I've talked a little bit about my inner child, and that's a lot of healing work I do with the women I work with. It was so essential. I remember the most beautiful moment I had with my inner child was actually on the psilocybin trip, where I saw her. Like I saw her like in a fetal position, and I saw her, but there was like I could see her eyes more than anything, and it's as if she was scared to come out. In that moment, I burst into tears. It was like, oh, like that was another aha moment for me of like, whoa, just so much love for that inner child, right? The connection, the emotional connection, the physical connection, contact she needed when she was younger that perhaps she didn't receive fully. Like, it was up to me to make sure that she received that every single day and that she felt safe to come out and play, right? To express herself, to continue discovering the world, being curious, to speak her truth, right? To do her thing. So that really brought me into my heart, like, whoa, like seeing my inner child. And now my practice includes my inner child. So yes, as I'm mentioning, the psilocybin trips are an awakening of consciousness to a part of myself that was like, whoa, tension here needs healing. But then the integration work was like, well, I'm going to add this into my practice. So before, my practice was like vigorous yoga practice, and before that it was just running, very adrenaline workouts, lots of weights. And now it's just morphed into more breath work, clearing, cleansing, sounding, pelvic movements, some pleasure exercises, some pleasure practices as well. Yes, there is the asana component, but it's much more like juicy, more intuitive, more feel good. Right? There's no rigidity to it. Because I'm tuning into my inner child and I always connect with her. It's like, what do you need right now? Right? So it's like, and then offering that. So it's the one question of like, what do I need right now? But the other thing is following through. Right? Making the time to be with her. All right. So number 6, allowing myself to see and feel myself in the fullest range of my emotions. And I'm going to add like naked, okay, because I do come from a body dysmorphia. Like a lot of my healing was around my body and knowing that it goes much deeper than that, but I was really fixated on my body. So a really great healing practice I did was literally strip down naked and look at myself and say, I love you. At the beginning, I didn't believe myself. Right? It's not enough to just say, I love you, I love you. But that practice came after so many other practices and experiences that it literally clicked. Like, and I was, again, teary-eyed. It was so beautiful. Right? And another experience I had was to dance in front of the mirror. Right? To just when I started looking at myself dance in ways that, like, I never saw myself dance or my body move that way, that's really when I was like, whoa, like, and it's not that I was all like joy and love, it's like, I was like, again, like rage, crying, like I was allowing myself to go through the motions and observing myself in the same way, in the same time. And I remember this moment where I put my forehead on the mirror and I looked at myself and I had like this stern look in my face. And then I just remember like the tears came in and I placed my hand on my womb. And in that moment I knew, it's like, whoa, it's all connected to you, to my womb. Yeah, it was such a beautiful combination. So the lesson in there that I learned is, before you can really allow yourself or feel safe to open up to anybody else, like, you need to be able to see and feel your own self. Right? That's why the self-pleasure exercise is so important. And also not only that, but being able to witness your own self in the fullest expression of what's going on right now. Right? And to not hold back. Because a lot of the times we're taught to like suppress everything. Right? And I know that when I'm holding something back, it's here in my throat. So notice for you, like, when we all know like what we're holding back, when we're holding back. It's just a matter of really tuning into the body and noticing, well, how is my body actually holding on to this and creating tension and tightness and restriction? Like, your body is speaking to you every single moment. So for me, it was really like continue like connecting with your body and getting so comfortable being in your body as you go through the wave of motion. And to add on to that, I was mentioning, it's like the more like sexual layer to it, the pleasure layer. It's like, yes, you can see yourself in your pain, but can you also see yourself in your pleasure? Right? That beautiful spectrum. Yeah. Ooh, I'm getting really open here. All right, number 7. Being unapologetically me and going for what I love. So maybe you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I resonate. Or maybe you don't, and that's okay. But what I noticed for myself and for a lot of women, it's, again, like, we're living now, I can only speak for Canada, but in a society that is boxing us in, right? And we're not one-dimensional. It's like we don't do one thing and then call it a day. It's like we're everywhere, and that's okay, right? So I had to allow myself to be everywhere, right? But then I also had to find the boundaries and find the self-discipline to be like, you need to focus and be present right now and not do your multitasking thing, right? And I also had to realize that it's much easier to focus on something that you love, right? Not just because like, oh, I'm here in this job, for example, because it pays well, and yeah, basically, like whatever rationalized notion you have of what you're doing. But I had that experience a lot for 10 years when I was jumping up and around from jobs to jobs. Like, you know, like, what the hell? Especially my parents were like, you're kind of jumping around a lot. And I was like, yeah, but it's not me. Like, I was looking for, it wasn't vibing. So I had to allow myself that. In hindsight, I was like, there was a bit of shame there because I've been told that it was not good or correct to do that. Like, you won't have good references. And I was like, we don't need references. Okay, so it was like, what I'm trying to say, it's like, following my path has been actually the most important revelation along my healing journey. Because I noticed that when I'm following my path and doing what I love, like, opportunities come up. The right people come at the right time. Synchronicities happen, coincidences happen. Like, things start lining up. So instead of like, I was very controlling before, and I still have to watch out for that, but it would cause me a lot of anxiety. And I was also like, well, the opinions of others mattered a lot, and now it's not that they don't matter, but it's more like, what actually is lighting me up, and what do I want to create, and how do I want to live, and I'm on that path. And yes, that meant that there's some relationships that were not in alignment anymore, including my mom, and those are closest. So it's sad to say, but there is like, that's what I want to say. It's okay to say goodbye to some people, right? And it doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just means that there's a period of life that you had to spend with them, that you need to spend with them to get to where you are now, with basically the perspective and consciousness you have now. And now there's other people that are going to inspire you to continue going on your path, right? As long as you're aligned with what lights you up and what feels good from the inside out, like, things will open up. So leaning into life that way has been really healing for me, because then it doesn't dampen my soul, which is what I was feeling in my other jobs. Okay, and yes, like, the life of an entrepreneur is not easy, but then I'm like, I 10 times fold be doing what I do now and having the risk, yes, of not getting a paycheck every month or every 2 weeks, than being in a job where it sucks the soul out of me. Right? So again, it's not either or. It's not one is better than the other, but it's just like gaining that awareness of like, this doesn't fit who I am. I'm going to go somewhere else or create something new. And again, entrepreneurship is not for everybody, so I'm not saying go be an entrepreneur. It's like only you know what is in alignment with your soul's purpose, with what you're actually being called to share in this world and gift. And it's up to you to cultivate that, to know what is my gift. Maybe it's being called out by others. Maybe you're not noticing it. And the big, deep work that I've been working on is that innate value. The value is not in how much output and content I put out. It's in actually who I am. Thus why my practice every single morning is so important. But because it brings me back to me. Because I know that when I fill my own cup, it just outpours. When I say fill my cup, I mean fill my cup with love, not with fear or negative beliefs or toxicity or everything that, to be honest, is being fed to us a lot out there. So it's been huge, following your path. All right, last, I'm going to end with this one. The 8th lesson that really helped was slowing down. Yeah. Because again, my background is I'm so disconnected in my body. I'm anxious. I'm in my mind a lot. Right? Slowing down required me to be more present in my body, in my surroundings. And when I become more present in the now, instead of worrying about the future or being very tied and attached to the past, not able to let go. And for me, it was mostly grieving my past relationship. Then I'm not able to receive the blessings and abundance of the now and of what's coming, because I'm filled with everything from the past. Or I'm trying to get somewhere, forcing myself and leaning in too quickly. Completely, life passes by, but missing the signs and signals from my body, from the universe too, which ultimately is in here. So a slowing down is such a big part as well. I mean, they're all big parts of my journey. But slowing down it's not easy, especially for a person that sees the vision and is like, I know it's going to be manifested. I want it now. It needs to come now. It's like, wait a second. Everything has its divine timing. That's such a golden nugget. There's a divine timing to everything. And what you're experiencing now is just part of the journey, whether pleasant or unpleasant. Can you sit with that? Can you integrate that? Can you see that as a message from your soul? Right? Everything is perfect. It's working in your favor, if we choose to believe so. So this opening up to receive has been beautiful. That comes in tandem with slowing down. So slowing down my walking pace, slowing down my practice, right? So the only times I run, to be honest, is my favorite season, which is fall. Maybe in spring sometimes. But in the other times, it's either I'm leisurely swimming, and before I was swimming also, I love swimming, but I was very it's go, go, go. But now it's whoa, it's I'm in the water. It's really this mindfulness in the present moment, and just looking at the birds and just capturing everything in my environment and how it beautifully meshes with my inner environment, and they both feed on each other. Right? It's brought me so much peace. So nature has been a big, big, big teacher as an overall umbrella for everything, and something I really, really offer in all of my sessions with every woman I've worked with, and will always continue offering this, is connect with nature. The recalibration that happens on its own is healing in itself. right? And you're unplugged, ideally you're alone and in a place that's not too crowded, but even if you're at a place that's crowded in the summer, let's say in a lake in Canada, there's still this, how can I say, nurturing or soothing energy that reminds us that we are nature as well when we are among her, in whichever element calls most to you. Right? For some people it's like, oh, the mountain. For some people it's the water. For some people it's the forest. For some it's the desert. So it's like, it's starting to notice like, okay, where am I? What is my safe space when I'm not, how can I phrase this? Because ultimately the safe space is in here. That's the big work. Like, how can I create that safety in here? So that I am able to show up in my authenticity, in my truth, in the world, and carve my own path. But there's also the aspect of nature can become your best ally. So where is it in nature where you feel the most centered, the most grounded, and that actually, not only that, allows you to move things through you. Right? So the water is very cleansing and purifying. So for emotions, it's natural to maybe feel a bit more emotional when you're around or in water. Sun, fire. How many people just smile when they see the sun? I know I do. And then the earth is very grounding, stabilizing. If you're a lot in your mind, that's why earthing is so popular and important, because a lot of us in this first world country we're very much in our minds, very worried, anxious. So when we can just drop that energy down to our feet and just remember, we're always supported here. There's always this nurturing energy and this unconditional loving vibe from Mother Nature. This abundance. Because we're fed a lot of fear, we're fed a lot of scarcity, we're fed a lot of things through the media. Right? So it's like, can I remember that I am actually cared for? And I'm connected to something bigger. So nature walks have been so important for me. And I remember a couple of years ago when I was going through my heartbreak, I would go to this one tree that's close by here. And I just sit. And I remember crying. It was just like, for me, that tree was so sturdy and she was just there, present. And it was my tree I would go to. On my little walks, I'd go, and then I wouldn't maybe cry every time, but I remember there were moments where I just got on my knees and it was just like, let go, let go, let go. Right? And I'd feel much more at peace after. Not only was I at peace because I let out the tears, which are cleansing themselves, but I felt held and supported by the tree. When I didn't think I had anybody to talk to at that point. I was using nature as my greatest therapy. Okay. All right. I think we're complete. It was a lot that I shared. So again, so curious to know if anything has resonated for you and out of those lessons that I learned on my personal healing journey. I know I'm not the only one. So I'd love to know from you if anything came up for you. And I also want to offer 2 programs and mention them depending on when you're hearing this. I have an upcoming masterclass called Dancing with Demons, and it's coming up in March 14, 15, 16. And if shadow work is something that you're looking into, if inner child healing speaks to you, then this is going to be the masterclass for you. So we're really going to be looking at your beliefs, your fears, your demons, as I like to call them, and getting really curious. Okay, and getting curious about, well, who's actually trying to protect me? Like, why is it that I'm having trouble moving forward? Or is it that I'm looping around? There's the same pattern that's coming. Those are the signs that perhaps there's a fear that's holding you back. Okay? And it's a beautiful segue, this Dancing with Demons, to my bigger journey, which is Phoenix Rising, is coming up in end of March, beginning of April. Okay, and that's going to be a 3-month journey when we're going to dive deeper into shadow work, do some alchemy. So do inner child healing, do nervous system recalibration, do some emotional alchemy. We'll learn about the emotions and what they mean and how to work with them and transmute that energy. And then we'll end with the heart piece, the piece where we come into full self-acceptance and a space in our heart that allows us to find more wholeness within. Okay, so Dancing with Demons is a beautiful segue. If you've worked with me, if you haven't, you're going to get a vibe of, well, how do I actually teach and my style? And it will also give you beautiful reflection piece on, well, how have I been actually perhaps self-sabotaging myself for my own growth? And how am I actually holding me back from experiencing life to the fullest, right? In my relationships, in my career, in my finances, in my health, in all aspects. Okay, so maybe you feel called to coming to Dancing with Demons. Maybe you feel called to Phoenix Rising. Maybe both. I'll leave it up to you. I'll put the links in the description for this episode. And of course, if you have any questions, I'll put my email as well so you can connect with me and we can chat. All right, loves. Thank you so much for being here, for listening. It's an honor. I honor you and your path, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.